A grown man, $38,000 in debt, crying in his car. Now this is peak fiction. This is a story called Radiant Black, and if you're anything like me, you're gonna freaking love this thing. Let me introduce you to Nathan Burnett. Life in Los Angeles wasn't going too well for him. He was $38,000 in debt, working for a company called Driver, pretty much the same thing as Uber, and on the phone with a bank, practically begging for a loan. However, because his debt to income ratio was too high, they rejected his application, leaving him crying in the car as his passengers loaded inside the vehicle. Now, Nathan's true passion was writing. He had a bunch of short stories published online and was currently writing a novel that was supposed to be his big break. Nevertheless, because writing hadn't paid off yet, he was forced to move back to his parents' house in Lockport, Illinois. Despite being so underwhelmed and disappointed in himself, his mom and best friend Marshall were super excited to have him back. So later that night, him and Marshall went to a bar because Marshall wanted to catch up and know how he was doing as a big-time writer now. But as we all know though, writing hadn't paid off and he was drowning in debt. So Marshall asked if his parents were going to help him, but they didn't have money like that, and they were on their way to retirement. As the night went on, Marshall took a wide variety of friendly jabs at his friend's failing career choice, but for the most part, he tried encouraging him. It was safe to say Marshall had his fair share of alcohol when they finally stopped drinking, so they started walking back to their car, only to discover some sort of glowing black hole-looking thing on the train tracks. Clueless but curious as to what it was, they decided to check it out. Nathan thought maybe it was some sort of signal projection for the railroad, but it was so weird and looked the same from every angle. Sooner or later, Nathan made the brave decision to grab it, and immediately upon doing so, his body started changing. The sphere was bonding to him somehow, and some sort of suit started forming around his body. Once the transformation was finished, he started freaking out to the point where he was puking all over the floor. And then things got even more complicated as they were approached by police officers telling them to get off the train tracks. Now, for whatever reason, Marshall was not a fan of the police, so he started getting into it with them, telling them to mind their own business and refusing to get off the train tracks. Unbeknownst to him though, a train was speeding right towards them, and soon enough, Nathan was left with no other choice but to tackle him out of its path. However, somewhere along the line, he panicked, accidentally using his new powers to not only lift up the train, but the officers and their vehicles as well. Once they put the officers down, Nathan and Marshall fled the scene to a nearby tower. They couldn't believe what just happened and were kinda geeking out about how cool it was. Apparently, all Nathan had to do to lift up the train was think about it. But as the adrenaline rush wore off, Nathan realized he couldn't get his helmet off, causing him to panic once again. So Marshall told him to do the same thing he did with the train. Just think about the helmet coming off. Surprisingly, it actually worked, but either way, Nathan was pissed. Marshall almost got them killed, and it was completely unnecessary for him to act how he was towards the police officers. Life was already hard enough with his failing career. He had the chance to do something meaningful, and he wasted it. At one point, there was an agent interested in his book, but the first chapter wasn't even finished, and now he was long gone. Either way, whatever these new powers were, he knew they were an important opportunity, and he couldn't afford screwing them up the same way he screwed up writing. So Marshall assured him that he wouldn't let him fail. The fact that he was so worried showed a lot, and it was still possible for the writing thing to work out too. Writers wrote about what made them unique, and as of right now, he was definitely one of a kind. But that's when it's revealed that there's another person just like him but red, and they just got finished robbing a bank. With that being said though, our issue sadly comes to an end, but if you want to see what happens next, let me know in the comments down below.